world, Facebook world, all the worlds that are out here in these streets. I am Desiree Cocroft. I am the CEO of Destination Life LLC, and I am a self mastery architect, executive leadership and life coach, author, speaker, positive intelligence nerd, lover of brunch, dancer, all the things. And I am here with one of my good friends, Barbara Dash, with the Corporate Creative. Hey, Barbara.
Hey, how are you? How's your day going today?
Good. It's a good Friday. So I have Barbara with me, and I'm going to let her tell her a little bit about herself and what the Corporate Creative is.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. Yes, my name is Barbara Dash. I have a community called the Corporate Creative that helps people who are balancing their corporate careers and their creative passion or side projects, utilizing financial development, consultant placement, and creative development as well.
Yes, and it's so needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So many people out
Definitely.
here want to do some things outside of what they're doing at their workplace and in their careers.
Mm-hmm.
I know you have been that person, and I am definitely that person. Most of my life, always not only just having a very fulfilling career, but also having a lot of different passion projects and entrepreneurial efforts. So it's great to have that support. So myself and Barbara are going to be coming together to do a couple of lives the next couple of weeks just to talk
Absolutely.
about
I'm
the
excited.
challenges. Yeah, what did you say, Barb?
No, I was just saying I'm excited. Go for it.
Yeah, no, I heard. I don't know why I'm getting a little feedback, so it might be me.
Okay. Okay.
But either way, I'm really excited because we'll be talking about some of the challenges that come with having a side hustle. And
Mm-hmm.
there are many challenges that can come along the way, right?
Definitely.
So, over the next couple of weeks, we'll be talking about those challenges. And so, today, we'll be talking about juggling all the things. So, today is all about time management, managing priorities, and things like that. So, if you are joining us live, go ahead and drop in the chat where you are. Let us know if you got a side hustle right now or if you got a passion project, throw that in the chat. We want to know what you got going on. So we can be able to add that to this conversation. But definitely want to start off just talking about Barb, just tell us a little bit about what are some of those challenges that you've had, when you were juggling your corporate career as well as some of the other things that you enjoy doing.
Definitely. So I can think of so many, honestly, and I think I've been playing with mastering time management for the last 3 to 4 years. Right, there's always something that's shifting, but I think I can pinpoint some of the most beneficial things that have helped me master that. Right, and so the first thing was definitely knowing my body and knowing my time schedule. I think when you are someone who is balancing a professional career, a side project, a side hustle, a creative business, any of those things. We have so many things going on, right? And our minds are moving a million miles an hour. And so it's how do you settle those things? And I think a lot of us, we go to other resources that tell us how we should be doing it. They tell you wake up at 6 a.m. They tell you should be doing this so many times a day or so many times a week, right? They tell you this and you try to fit yourself to those schedules. And a lot of times I found myself very disappointed when I couldn't keep those schedules. And I wasn't as motivated to do it. Why can't I get up and read for an hour at 6 a.m. every day? And those things affect you, right? And so one day I just sat down and I think there was a time where I was extremely productive, maybe for about a month or so. And I realized for me, that was working from 3 p.m. to 2 in the morning. That was allowing my body to naturally wake up at 11 a.m., right? So you hone in on what your schedule looks like, what your body looks like, what your working time looks like, and you nail that down for you. Don't allow, other time management. Definitely do your research, right? See what could be helpful, but not to the extent that you feel like the only way you can make your goals are locking into other people's things. So that was really, really helpful for me. And I'd say the second thing on time management, I had to let go of the to-do list. That long list that does not end. I had to let it go. And a lot of times I still find myself,
That's
feeling
hard.
it is hard. It is hard. And then you look up and there's 30 things and you feel accomplished because you take off 7, but then those 7 sometimes have new steps. So you add things back on. And I transitioned to the time management matrix. So have you seen the time management matrix with the 4 sections?
Yes.
And it allows you to graph out urgent versus important. That was extremely helpful for me because until you see it labeled, this is not urgent, this is not important, and this is something I'd be interested in, but does not have to happen right now. You find yourself spending time on a lot of things that weren't actually beneficial towards my goals, towards whatever the goals I set for my business. So I'd encourage everybody else to do the same thing. Really take some time to sit down and say, yes, these are things that I love to do. These are things I want to get out of the way. But what I set my goals as, building that business, connecting with other creatives, advancing professionally, taking on additional projects at work, is just getting into those things. And if you say no, well, then they might have to go back, a little further on the back burner.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so good. Like being true to like who you are, how your body works, like what are the natural things that work for you instead of always prescribing to other people's stuff. And that's the thing, when you decide that you want to do something outside of your job and do something that is probably equally as like strenuous in terms of like the focus it's going to take. A lot of times, in these entrepreneurial streets, there's so many things to read, so many tactics to do, and people are like trying to tell you all the things to do and trying to figure out, well, what is the one thing that works for me? And so I love that you're talking about how you can really, take the thing that you read and, you learn from other people and then ultimately just get back to what works for you.
Definitely. And I want to hear that from you too. How was your time management journey when you began? When it first started, was it difficult? And if you've mastered it, if you've kind of reached an ideal balance between the two, how do you feel like you landed there?
Yeah, I think, you said something about that urgent and important, like really figuring out what is most important in the entrepreneurial journey overall. Like sometimes it's, being creative about whatever your strategy is. And so like putting the time in there. And then sometimes, it is about, okay, how am I monetizing? How am I spending time on revenue generating activities? And then, like almost deciding like, what does success look like for me? And so the answers to all of those questions have helped me juggle all of the things, because in some places and times, especially because when you're working a full-time gig, monetizing isn't always as important, especially when it's something that you're mission driven, you feel really like mission driven to do or purpose driven to do. It's like, what, I can have some delayed gratification. I have the benefit of delayed gratification here. I really can just enjoy what I'm doing and how I'm serving others. And so when those things were less important to me in terms of like revenue generating activities, I could spend time really doing the thing that I loved, like serving people and speaking and developing, assets and all of that. And then there were times where, you wanted to see, the math. It's like, okay, I've invested all of this. Let me do something revenue generating thing. Even though I don't need it, it's like I actually desire it, so that I can use it for other areas of my life that can still support the way I'd like to live. And so that is another time where, it's like, okay, let me put these activities to the front. But I love being able to be at choice, and there's no knock. I've actually been on the other side of doing full-time entrepreneurship, and I've been always more so than not working and having entrepreneurial things that I'm doing. And I will say, it's pros and cons on both sides. And I'm saying where I am right now, the pro is it's like I'm not working for my livelihood, right? Like I have something that's taking care of me and something that I actually enjoy, which everyone doesn't have the ability to say. And then I can still do the things that I desire, but just really just managing what is most important in whatever I'm doing in my entrepreneurial journey really helps me decide what I want to do. But to your point about, figuring out what works for you, I was at 5 a.m., 6 a.m.
Oh,
prison.
Bless your heart. Bless your heart.
Listen, now working for me is relative. Now, I would do it for like a season, like 60 days, 30 days. Okay, I'm going to get up and this is what I want to do. But it wasn't always like all the time. But I would just do different tactics depending on my workload. And then whatever was happening in my personal life, to your point, taking away that pressure of it has to be like this your whole journey,
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's important. What are like some of the tools that you use to like manage, all the things? Did you have certain tools, or do you have certain tools that you use?
I don't know that I have certain tools realistically. I think that when I feel like I've tried all the apps and all the platforms, right? I don't want to call myself old school, but I honestly just write everything down, because it's a second piece of memorization that I don't know if people recognize. Yes, I live by a calendar, of course. Everything's blocked off the moment it gets added. All of my notifications say 1 hour, 3 hours, like
Yeah.
always. But no, I typically just write things down because I know for some reason for me that sort of locks it in. Like I remember to go back to it, and I'm always checking for it. And then I've tried platforms like Asana and Monday. Yeah, I think I try to be flexible to whatever the teams are using. Do you have some tools that you use? Because I'd love to know. Maybe you can teach me some.
I know, right? We can definitely exchange. Hey, Crystal, I see you. Definitely, I love Asana. Asana is the
Okay.
project management tool I've used
Yeah.
in and out. So I love that. Calendly. I used Acuity back in the day. So Acuity was my go-to for a little bit. You're like, no, but I did Acuity. But I love Calendly. Calendly is like,
Yeah.
my movie right there. So I love using that as a tool. And then honestly, some tools that are already embedded in some of our email, like schedule send. I did MailChimp for a while. That was like my email system. I think it's really important that, when you have a full-time gig and you also have, your side passions to keep your like business model as simple as possible. As simple as possible until you're really talking about like scaling and hiring people, which you still could do when you're working full time. But a lot of times people are not there yet and they quit before they get ahead because they make it too complicated. So I'm just like, how can you make it super simple? So I'm like, what is the free tools out here? I want to use that until I grow enough to have to pay for it. I use Wix. I know some people are like, no Wix when it comes to for my website. I use Wix for my website. I made my own website. I made my own website in like 2016, and I've had it redone over the years by professional.
Still on Wix?
Yep, still on Wix, keeping it on there professionally, so somebody else can do it. And she's the boss, and she really hooked my website out. But I found over the years that, especially working with people, everybody's so big on website, and I think website is important. So I'm not throwing that away. I think that when you're first getting started, and especially when it's a side hustle, like that's not the biggest thing you need to do, depending on your business, right? Most people, and I know you're like service based, for the most part. And I think in this service based streets, just depending on what you're trying to do with your life, like that's the last thing that actually matters. But sometimes, yeah, she spent so much time on it. So, like, I think in part of juggling all the things, figuring out like what is the most important thing to do when you're getting started. So, I mean, with that being said, so we talked about a couple of tools. Bar, what are some of the things that you feel like are like the most important, like when you're like getting started in your side hustle, when you got to juggle stuff?
What are the most important? I would say, if I think back, I'm almost thinking of the question, what do I think was most important then in hindsight, right? Because sometimes at the moment you don't know what's the most important. But right now, I would say, and this isn't even tangible, right? I think I'm really trying to come up with another answer, but the one I'm thinking of is communication. Honestly, I think being clear about your boundaries and being transparent about what you are doing made a world of difference for everything that I was able to balance, right? I went into my career. I went to the company, initially asking for a 4-day work week, and that was that was only in the first year. And then the next year, I said, "Hey, I want to pivot to 3, right?" And I was very clear. I'm managing this nonprofit. I am working on a business that serves this group of people. And how I tried to make that appealing and saying, "Hey, I need a 3-day work week," was also saying the target audience who I'm serving is ultimately going to benefit you as well, right? Because if I'm serving corporate creatives who also work in organizations like this, firms like this, if I can have a positive experience having worked with them and, still being able to contribute to the team, it not negatively affecting, my promotion or how I, matriculate in the firm, but also building my creative career. Ultimately, when I have that positive experience, I become an endorsement for you, right? So how can we do this together? What are your concerns ahead of time so I can make sure I'm on top of it? Or is it weekly reporting? But, I definitely think communicating that in advance instead of having to hide, I have this thing on the side and then I'm running off at 6 o'clock and they're wondering why I can't stay for some really important deadline, right? It's like you're backing the times, and I did that in the past, taking on side things. The times that I did that, I found myself backed in a corner.
Right.
When someone needs something and it's time for you to show up and say, hey, this my career means a lot to me too. And they don't understand because they don't know why you're running off and you're being secretive. So I would encourage people, yes, it is sometimes difficult because you're asking yourself, do I have to expose this of me, right? Maybe there's some parties that says, I want to keep this private because they don't deserve this, or this is my business professionally, and my other me gets to be that. And I know it's something we've groomed ourselves to do socially that's been accepted, but I can say it speaks volumes. My life is so much more happy and I'm more content, knowing that I don't have to sort of hide this piece of me. And that communication piece just opened up the time management, right? Yeah. There is no like blocking so many things off. I can be honest about having to take a call in the middle of the day and I won't be online, right? I can be honest about running to do something else important, just because I, started to make it very clear that, hey, this is my mission. I'm trying to get creatives very corporate, very comfortable in corporate, and how do they balance those. So yeah, I'm glad that I learned that lesson, and I don't think I can take it back. Now at this point, I walk in corporate rooms and I'm screaming through the roof, hey, I'm also creative. So,
this is what I do. Like, you good? Yeah. No, that's real. I love that. And I feel the same way. Like, I feel like there was, I don't think it was ever a time, now that I think about it, in my career time where I ever felt like I had to hide anything that I was doing. So I have a nonprofit and I have a for-profit organization, and that is actually always what I led with. I think maybe one time in band camp, I actually kept it off my resume when interviewing for a position, but anytime I was in the actual interview or when I was in that position, I just said what it was, and no one ever had an issue with it. I think being very clear with your integrity too, like, like, I'm not here to do anything that's off key, right? I think most people or organizations, they get thrown off because they don't want anybody stealing their intellectual property or doing things that are out of integrity. And so I think we have to, as like you said, communicating and just being real about it. It's almost like, hey, accept me for who I am, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to do something that is out of integrity either. When you find out like I'm doing something for my business, I need you to know, like, hey, I would never even work anywhere where I would take somebody's stuff, So I think keeping things very clear is good. And it's cool. Like, I've actually had the opportunity of having, colleagues, support some of the things that I did outside of work. And it doesn't have to feel taboo, and it's a part of like our conversations. And it doesn't have to feel like weird. Where,
you know what? Everything you're saying is really speaking to one, your boldness, which I love, because everybody does not have the strength to do that, right? So then, that leads to another conversation of how you became comfortable doing that, because I've had conversations. It's so tough for a lot of people to do that. Yeah. But also the culture, the environment that you're working in, it speaks volumes to where you're at, that you've been able to grow and excel in spaces that are like, we get that and we can support you. Yeah. I'm curious, with your experience at work, have you ever reached a time where one of them had to take a back burner, right? Either your professional career or your side business, your business. And how did you manage that?
Yeah, that's good. Yes, and yes on both sides. When I was doing a lot of work with my nonprofit, when I was working in Milwaukee with my nonprofit, there was times where I actually stopped working full time and I did contract work because I wanted to spend more time working on the business. And so that's when full-time work, took a back seat. I was at choice, but I decided that, hey, I wanted a little more time freedom, a little more, just autonomy of how long I went to work and when I had to cut off things. And it worked out for me. I know we'll be talking about it a different day, but my financial life really helped. Having my own finances together helped me be at choice there. So that's always important too when you're juggling those things. But that was a time where I had to take a back seat because, there were things in the business that I wanted to help grow. And then, there are times where, work has definitely overtaken it. But because I enjoy what I do so much, it hasn't made me like super sad all the time. Only just kind of getting back in the swing of things in my personal business, where it's like, okay, I got to get back things going. But I can't say that it's with a heavy heart, because I really enjoy the work that I do. And so having to manage that ahead of time, doing my quarterly or yearly planning strategically has really helped with that. I will say that where it gets tricky is that when I actually get into those busy times, really being able to manage both things and still maintain rest. That is the biggest part. And if I have to choose rest, I'm gonna choose rest every time. Something is gonna fall. So like, you need to like actually like thrive and not just survive, the life that you're living. And so that makes me even further, like we were talking about, like cut down on the priorities. It's like, okay, like how can I make my business model as simple as possible, and make my goals as realistic as possible? How can I leverage working with other people? How can I leverage the price point that I have, so that when I am working my other business, it's not this have to do it, is doing it because I actually desire to do it, and not because it's this force because of the need for volume or what have you. And so, yeah, I've definitely had both sides. I mean, there was a time where, like I left my full-time job completely just to go full-time, not contract work, go full-time in my business at one point. So, it's always been there, but I always feel like, especially when you create really great relationships in whether it's corporate, nonprofit, but just in the world of work, I always have a place wherever I go. Like, people want me.
Say that.
Listen, people want me. People don't want to lose me. And I try to do my best. Well, I don't try. I do my best to make sure that I, leave good relationships in a good place. And I think that that's important too. I think people that are looking to have a side hustle, or I don't like to call it a side hustle, but that's how people understand it to be. Right. But, a side business, entrepreneur, whatever the case is, I think it's really important to make sure they're doing it from an energy of this is what they're excited about doing versus, ooh, I hate my job and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, go find another job because you're probably going to need the money because this is not going to turn over right anyway. And so I think it's important to just, sometimes people are driven by, the negative situations that happen in their life, and that does help them get to, the other side of something positive. But I think more times than not, I find people getting disgruntled with something and they bring that into their business, and it's not going to help you. So you need to just be you need to find a way to find your happy,
Right. Right. Mm-hmm. No, you touched on something that I want to hone in more too, because I heard you speaking of your quarterly planning, right? And I'm curious, as far as our time management space, how far high level are you looking when you're making those goals? Because when I am doing sort of quarterly or semi-annual goals, I sometimes have a hard time really nailing those, because like you said, a lot of these things will come up, work, something takes a back seat. What are you looking at? What have you found successful when you're looking that far out? 3 months for me is a long time. I'm looking
No, that's real. I mean, 3 months is a long time here too. Usually I look at it largely like annually first, like, okay, what do I want to see happen in this year? And then I use the 12-week year to do a lot of, it's not really quarterly planning, but it's called, it feels like quarterly planning because it's 12 weeks. But the way the 12-week year is set up is that, have you read the book before, or do you know 12 weeks?
I haven't. Now I'm like,
get into these streets. 12-week year is where it's at. So 12-week year is a really great resource about kind of really truncating your goals. So things that take a year, he's saying, make your year 12 weeks. And so I think about the things that I want to do in a year, and then I pick, well, which one of those things do I want to get done in the first quarter? So like my first 12-week year, instead of calling it a quarter, is like, you don't get to chop up that one goal in quarters. You get to chop up that goal in, a quarter. You know what I'm saying? Like, you not chop it up in a quarter, but yet within the quarter, like, you get it done. So I really like that. It actually makes you accelerate and not dibble dabble with things. And being someone that is a solopreneur, you get a chance to really focus in on something and get it done. And so I enjoy that. So it's like if you were looking to like launch a course or do a, a workshop series or create a product, I did that when I wrote my book. Like I did it in a 12-week year phase.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you got this time, like that's it. Like it got to be done within that time frame. And I got it done. And so that's how I have to do it, because otherwise you end up having way too many goals in one time, especially when it's just you, yourself, and you know?
Yep.
When it's you, yourself, and you, that makes it way too much. And I know like some people might feel like other things won't get done, but that's the whole point. Other things won't get done. So there are going to be some things that kind of fall off or get haphazardly done. But you got to be okay with that, because, you know, unless you're going to get other staff, otherwise it's going to be a lot of things that take a long time to get done. You just got to be okay with some things are just going to be left behind. So
I need to take some pages out of your book. I've heard a while as far as planning goes. I can't. The number of times I've heard that if you give yourself a deadline, you'll get it done by that deadline. I'm waiting for that to become true, because I give myself deadlines all the time.
It's like, what is happening?
Oh my God. So I'm like, what am I doing? So I'm hopeful that book will, you know, maybe nail it in for me to how to really stick to that timeline.
Yeah, you know, that the book will help for sure. Like I think it'll give you like just a framework of how to hone things on. I will say the other part when you said that, because I think we all at one point or another are struggling with staying true to the thing we actually put on our calendar or what we said we were going to do. And so I think that in terms of like juggling all the things of time management, our perspective of what we are managing is also a big deciding factor on whether things get done, right? If I'm thinking that what I have in front of me is too much, or I'm not ready for it, or I planned all this, I'm excited today, and then tomorrow I'm super overwhelmed. If I allow my mind to take over and have a amygdala hijack, like, no, this is too much. You've never done this before, or who do you think you are? And blah, blah, blah. So, you know, those things in our mind that happen usually is the reason that we don't actually attack our list. So it's almost overcoming those, you know, like those things in our mind that are, you know, holding us back. And it's going to happen because we're human beings and our mind doesn't ever like stop talking. Because
well, see, now you seem to be a master of this. So I have a wrench to throw in here, and I want to know how you handle this, right? I agree. A lot of other things come up right now where we're asking ourselves what else is important. I think what I find happens with why I get offset from my other goals are two things. Either an opportunity that I didn't expect that feels like it's aligned with what I'm trying to accomplish. So now I'm like, oh, I got to take this opportunity. And everything goes in the back burner. Or secondarily, mentorship, right? You're working with people who tell you, who guide you, hey, this is how you manage it. This is this next step you want to take. It's completely different than what you're already on track to do. But I've already committed myself to do this, right? Now, instead of taking mine off the table and putting theirs there, or taking on the opportunity, I done went from 1 to 2 to 3. So how do you sort of have that conversation with yourself of when do you know it's the right time for you to commit to what you set out, and when do you know to sort of pivot or shift to other things happening from mentors, from, you know, opportunities that could work out well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I probably am a little different than most, because I will go rogue on my plan if something else more either appealing or just a better lucrative opportunity comes up. I'll go rogue. However, I will go rogue when it's aligned to my overall mission and vision. So I think getting back to the mission and vision of what you are doing, and if it doesn't fit in that mission and vision, then don't do it. But if it fits in that mission and vision and it ends up being something that actually is a better opportunity or a one-time in a lifetime, I don't believe in that, but you know, it's that one time that you're going to get it opportunity, then I'm like, hey, go for it. But if it's not aligned, kind of like off, and you're doing a whole lot of work to try to make the dots connect, and I think, you know, being in tune with your body is important. Like, you know, what's coming up for you? Are you doing it from a space of like, I'm trying to please my mentor, or this person seems like they know what they're talking about and maybe I don't, you know, like those things in terms of self-doubt, or doing things from a place of fear. I feel like that's a signal to you that, you know, that you might not want to shift in that direction. But that takes practice to even recognize what's happening. And sometimes we don't even know until the next day we make that decision the next day and we're like, oh, never mind. I don't need to do that. So I think the more you practice, like knowing your mission, making decisions aligned with your mission and vision, but also recognizing those self-sabotaging tendencies that you may have to please other people, to do things. I know, right? To do
There's
things.
so many nuggets this conversation can we so many other people, but that's what you're hitting the nail on the head with, self-sabotaging. What are the reasons you're really doing this? Evaluating that, being able to sit with yourself. You're absolutely right. It takes time. I can recall the times where I was just sort of grabbing at things, and then you really lock in on what you want and how you want to serve, because you want to show up the best way that you can, and sometimes that means serving the way you decided to, right? Not serving in the way that people see it's connected. Because that'll happen too. People will say, "Hey, I think this would be great for you," or "I think you would be great at this too," and it's like, I appreciate that, but this is how I know I can show up really well. But yeah, you definitely hit the nail on the head with that one.
Listen, it can be rough in the streets like out here, especially when you're juggling all the things, but you're still managing yourself. You know what I mean? Like you're managing yourself through all of that, and that's the key. Like if we don't stay attuned to who we are and what we need to do to keep ourselves like in a place of being productive and moving things forward, we'll find ourselves jumping all over the place. It'll be a year later and we feel like we don't know why we are where we are, and it's because we've delved into some of these self-sabotaging tendencies. Not that we are self-sabotager, tendencies that really are keeping us from just staying on the course.
Yeah,
so, yeah. This is such a good conversation, Barb. I'm so glad that we have decided to do this together. It's already at the 30-minute mark. These are only like 30-minute conversations, so I'm going to give people, their space. Are we going to still do an after party at IG? We talked about doing that.
We did say we were going to do that. I'll let that be your call. I'm an old person. I'm always down for
it's Friday, so we're going to do an after party on IG. I'm going to get on IG Live with Barb, and we're going to chat a little more about this, so you can follow us there. But again, I am Desiree Cocroft with Destination Life, and this is Barb Dash with the Corporate Creative. This is our first of our side hustle challenge series, like the challenges that we have as side hustlers. We'll be getting back on next Friday and the Friday after next. That's a movie. Yep. At the same time, 6:30 Eastern, to have more conversations. Next week, we'll actually talk a little bit about the money that kind of happens, that money part, the math be mathing when it comes to be a side hustler. So we'll be talking about that next week. So join us there or join us in our IG after party. We're going to keep talking about juggling all the things. So until then, if you are interested in seeing us live and in person, we'll actually be having an event in DC. What? We are going to be in the DC area, the area. We're going to be there, and we're going to be having a session for, specifically for, the people that we serve. So people that are in corporate, that are creatives, people that are professionals that have a side hustle passion project, and they really want to manage their time and manage their mind, right? So those are going to be the two topics that we actually focus on. This is going to be in August. So Thursday, August 3rd, we'll be spending about 2 hours that evening together. So if you are serious and you really have something that you want to manage your time and you want to also manage your mind so that you can get these things done in your business and still have a very fulfilling career, this will be a really great opportunity, especially if you're in the DMV area. If you're not, and you know someone, feel free to pass it along. And we would love to see you, right,
Barb? We would love to see you there. You guys don't want to miss it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And so until next week, we'll see you all later. Feel free to share this, like this, comment, all the things. Let us know what you want to hear, and we will talk to you soon.